Well, thank you so much, Helen, for joining us today. I would love you just to briefly introduce yourself, if you wouldn't mind.
Hi, yes, I'm Helen Dornom. So I work for Dairy Australia, which is an industry-owned national service organisation. So Dairy Australia's primary function is to support the dairy industry, and my role at DA is part of the leadership group and also to help the industry develop and implement its sustainability framework.
Terrific. And that leads really well into the first question I wanted to ask you, which is, what does sustainable Australian dairy look like?
Well, it is actually about ensuring that we are able to continue producing highly nutritious foods for a healthier world. So we've moved to actually making sure that we think about dairy as a food, not just as dairy, because it is part of a food system. And for us in the industry, we've been doing many things for many years, but we haven't really, didn't have a story to tell about why we're doing what we're doing. So a sustainable industry is actually about us being able to be much more explicit about why we're doing things, why we're continually improving our practices, why we need to continually improve our practices so we can be around for the future. In the end, processing and producing dairy is fairly similar across everybody. So the opportunity to think about things collectively is a great opportunity for all of us, rather than doing it all individually and repeating where it's at. So also for a dairy product, we're only as good as our weakest link. So we can have incredibly great practices and at processing and farming side, but if we have people who are letting us down, that's what the activists and others will focus on, not on the good things that we're doing.
What kind of things are customers demanding more and more?
Well, that itself is changing. You know, if you go back to when we first started, and well, it first started off with environment. So when people first started talking about sustainability, I mean, generally, it was very much about the planet and where we're at. And I guess a lot of extreme events around that time pushed the focus onto what do we need to do to ensure that, you know, that we're not contributing to that. And that quickly for us as an animal-based industry went to welfare. So welfare and environment were key areas that people wanted to know about. But what it didn't allow for was the opportunity for us to tell the great story that dairy supports local communities and people. So, but over the years, what customers want also changes, which is why within the industry, we need to keep up with the community and customer concerns. So for us, you know, we started off with people, planet, animals. That's now moved to effectively well-being and climate change. It's also emerging issues like antimicrobial resistance, antimicrobial stewardship, human rights, food waste, etc. All of that is now what customers want to know. And the more you see the big business making promises, and many of those big businesses have moved to promising, you know, net zero carbon by 2030 or 2040 or 2050, it's fine for them to promise that. But what that means is they didn't come and ask anybody supplying them, what are you doing to help me meet my promise? So even if we don't directly have goals for some of these things, by default, we still need to meet them because what our customers want to know.
Yeah, it's fascinating to hear where the drivers for sustainability is coming from. And we've touched a little bit on this, but I wonder if you're able to expand on the what are the biggest opportunities for the dairy industry to address some of these sustainability issues?
I think it's like all things with challenges come opportunities. It depends how you choose to look at them. And so for us as an industry, the opportunity is for us to actually be aware of what is being asked and to try to stay up with those requirements. I mean, we'd like to think that we're ahead of them, but I doubt whether anybody ever gets ahead of it. But it is important to stay up with it. And for us, the greatest opportunity is for us to recognise the need for us to change. Often, you know, going back a few years, people would say, when is enough enough? When am I good enough? When can I rest? I don't have to change. And you say, well, unfortunately, never, because the goalposts always get shifted, always stay moving. If you don't keep up with the movement in the goalposts and you just stay where you're at for a while, by the time you need to move, the gap is huge and it's much harder to make that change. Whereas if you move as the goalposts are moving, you have much more opportunity to stay abreast of where the requirements are.
I wonder, how does the dairy industry keep abreast of these changes?
Well, it's not easy, but we have a consultative forum in the industry. It meets twice a year, and so that's got a number of external groups. World Wildlife Fund, a lot of the NGOs, RSPCA, environment groups, investors, etc. It's also looking at what our peers are doing, both globally, nationally, within dairy and within other businesses, whether it be food or whether it be other businesses, just to see where the pressures are coming from and what's happening. We also, many individual businesses are already seeing those pressures and having to respond. So, for us, it's actually having them feedback what they see as the challenges and what might we be able to do to help work with that. So, for example, I had a farmer ring me last week, and I was sort of wanting to know more about sustainability. One of the challenges for us is the grassroots needing to understand what needs to happen. Because sustainability doesn't really have a meaning as a program for many people. But when you sort of talk about what it means, now this farmer's down in Tasmania and says, for us, we're seeing some of the challenges New Zealand's facing. We have a face in Tasmania about quality of water, the need for us as an agricultural producer to make sure that we're not compromising the quality of water, that we, using fertiliser appropriately, not having nutrients run off, actually keeping cows out of waterways, etc. And so, when you talk about that, he's already doing a lot of those things because he can see that that's what needs to be done. He wants to be a good producer and good for the community as well. So, the opportunity for him though is for us to actually be able to magnify what he's doing amongst other farmers, so they can see that it makes good sense and actually makes good business sense. It's not just good for the community and it's going to cost me. So that is a win all around. And and once you start to talk about it, it's not just being a greenie or being a goodie. It's actually making sure that you're doing the right thing for everybody.
Terrific. Yeah, well, there's plenty to think about. Thank you so much for your time today, Helen.
You're welcome.